Oh, it is so good to be here with you this morning. I'm going to start with a story. I did prison ministry with a church in Phoenix. And we would actually go into the prison and work with the inmates there, most of whom were serving quite long sentences. And I was working with one who had been in prison for most of his adult life, was serving a 25-year sentence for armed robbery, and had pretty much been a career criminal. And the thing was, as I worked with him, I realized he was so smart. He was really, really smart and creative. And one day I said to him, wouldn't it be nice to take all that creative energy that you have, that wonderful wisdom that you have, and put it towards good? And he said to me, but this is what I've always known. And I said, isn't this a wonderful way for us to see a new path moving forward? And I challenged him. I said, what if you could be a transformative force for good in this world? He was a little mystified by that. And he said, what do you mean by that? And I said, a transformative force, meaning that wherever you show up, the light and love of who you are just goes before you. And you cannot help but transform the world by who you are. It doesn't matter what you do, it's who you are and how you show up in this world. We had long talks about that. And I've thought about that quite a bit in the last few weeks as I've prepared for this talk, because that's what my intention always is, to show up as a transformative force for good. I don't even know what that means sometimes, except that I simply show up. That line in Ashley's song, you don't have to do a thing, you just have to be there in the present, here and now. And that's what we are going to explore this morning. How can I show up and be that transformative force for good? And lo and behold, I love how Spirit works. I love how Spirit just drops things right into my lap at the moment that I need them. This book showed up. I actually saw it on LinkedIn. See, Spirit can talk to you in all kinds of ways, even through social media. And this book, The Secret Society of Success, I've got a slide of it here. This gentleman, Tim Schurer, wrote this book. And I was intrigued by the title. I thought, The Secret Society of Success, what does that mean? And he's talking about, in this entire book, about how in today's world, most of us, have you heard of influencers? And social media and how people want to have all these likes and followers. And he said that's like how everybody's working these days. They're your success by how many followers you have and how many likes you get and all the responses you get on your social media and how many YouTube viewers you have. And yet what he says is the real secret of success has nothing to do with that. And he actually calls it the secret society of people who are out there who are just showing up, who don't have any agenda for the limelight. Do you know what I'm talking about? They're not looking for the spotlight, and they're just showing up to be a part of the good in the world. And he actually says this. He says, chasing success for recognition or notoriety is the recipe for a meaningless life. Would you agree with that? And yet, isn't that what we're taught by the world? And so in the spiritual sense here, this morning we're going to get the spiritual nuggets about how we can live not in the way of the world, but in the way of Spirit, in that divine alignment that each one of us has that is always guiding us and showing us the next step on our path. Are you with me? A few of you. Are you with me? Yes. Okay, good. Amen. Yes. And so when we are in that place, we are not concerned about how many likes we're getting. We're only concerned with doing our part in making this world a nicer, kinder, more loving place. So I challenge you this morning, instead of being with the crowd, it's time to redefine success. And that we get to determine what that is, right? We get to determine what our own definition of success is. I once heard Martina McBride, who's a country music singer. I love her. And she said that one day she sat in a meeting with her manager, and her manager was like, well, you want number one songs, right? You want to be the top female artist, right? You want to be, sell millions and millions of records. And she folded her arms and she goes, who says that's my version of success? And I was like, wow, here's somebody who's at the top of her game who's deciding, yes, I love doing that. I love singing and sharing my gifts, but I have 3 daughters of whose lives I want to be a part. And so we get to determine how we're going to be a success in this world. I want to tell you another story. This comes from this wonderful book, The Secret Society of Success. And these are the astronauts. We're all familiar with the Apollo 11 astronauts. These are the astronauts. We know that Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon. But what's little known is that Michael Collins, the astronaut there in the center of the picture, he had to drop them off. They were in the lunar landing, so Armstrong and Aldrin went down to the moon, and they're the ones who are one small step for mankind, and they were on TV, and President Nixon called them unexpectedly and told them what a historic thing they had done. He didn't mention once Michael Collins. He was congratulating Armstrong and Aldrin because Michael Collins was going around the moon as they were doing all of their experiments and what they needed to do on the moon. He went around the moon 26 times. He had to keep that in the perfect orbit so that he could pick them up and get them home. Now, he's worried the whole time. He's like, I'm their Uber. I've got to get them home. And so they were getting lots of accolades when they landed safely back on Earth. Of course, the lion's share of the limelight went to Armstrong and Aldrin, and to this day still does. And you would think that Michael Collins would be, I was there too, come on. But instead, he had this to say. He said, I was perfectly happy with the seat that I had, the part that I played in it. All 3 seats were required for mission success. That's the secret of someone who knows his part in the mission and is able to just know that he was there to be a contributing part in these other gentlemen's heroic deeds. He was heroic too. The world just tends to recognize those who are out there doing it. And yet, if Michael Collins hadn't been a part of the team, it wouldn't have happened. And so when we are in this place of, I want to be up there, I want to be in the limelight, I want to do this, and Lord knows I have been there. I have been there. I remember reading a book in my 20s, and the book was all about women and leadership, and women were really coming into their own at that time and in positions of leadership. And the book actually said, if you're not aiming for the corner office, meaning the CEO job, you're wasting your time. And I thought, wow, okay, I guess I'm supposed to be, working for the corner office. I'm supposed to be the CEO. I'm supposed to be doing this, that. And I really got sidelined because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. That was what the world was telling me. And yet what I had to understand was I had my own path, as we all do. And that each and every time I made a decision, it was for my highest and best. No one else can determine what your success is. Only you can. And when we are in that place of not needing to be in the spotlight, that we know that we are successful no matter what, that the divine alignment within us is already success. Isn't that really the truth of who we are? That we're already a success just simply by showing up on this planet. We're already in that divine flow if we choose to accept it. If we choose to accept it. So the spiritual nugget here that I want to really embrace this morning is this. It's not every man for himself. We know that that's not a good recipe for life. And I found another wonderful story. This picture shows what this professor is talking about. he gave each of his hundreds of students a balloon. He said, I want you to blow it up. I want you to write your name on it with a Sharpie and throw it in the hallway. So they did as they were told. He then went out there and he just kind of mixed them all up. Then he let the students go back into the hallway and he said, now I want you to find your balloon. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. So they're all looking around and nobody could find their balloon. He has them come back into the classroom and he says, okay, we're going to try it differently this time. This time, I want you to pick up the balloon, see whose name is on it, and then I want you to go give it to that person. Within 5 minutes, everybody had their balloon. So just from the fact that they were coming from not, I'm in it to find me, I'm in it to help someone else find their balloon, changed the whole dynamic. And he said to them, these balloons are like happiness. We will never find it if everyone is looking for their own. But if we care about other people's happiness, we'll find ours too. And therein lies the secret. As we make others the focus of why we're here, our needs are magically, wonderfully, miraculously met. The founder of the Transcendental Movement, upon whom Ernest Holmes based much of his thinking and writing, Ralph Waldo Emerson was one of the most influential persons in Ernest Holmes' thinking, said this: it is one of the most beautiful compensations of life that no man can sincerely try to help another without helping himself. There's the wonderful law of cause and effect. And isn't that what we all operate by? We call it different things. We can call it karma. We can call it all kinds of things, the law of giving and receiving. And yet what it is what I put out into this world is what comes back to me. And that's what I was trying to get across to this inmate, was you can only steal from yourself. You can only lie to yourself. You think you're doing it to another person, but what you end up doing is you're only creating your own world as you do each and every word or act. He never really caught quite that understanding because the world was a huge influence on how he had grown up and how he was living and operating in the world. And yet, I knew as part of the Secret Society of Success, it was my job to model to him, whether he got it or not, because does it matter if someone gets it? No. It only matters that I show up as who I am here to be. So it didn't matter what went on with him. So if I'm here to be a transformative force for good in a number of ways, what's mine to do? What's mine to do? This is a question I've asked myself from the time I was reflective enough and self-aware enough to ask a deep question like that. And this can change, because what was mine to do at 20 is very different than what is mine to do at 64 today. I love the story of Beverly Sills. She was an unmatched opera singer. Unmatched. People just adored her. Has this incredible voice. And yet when she decided to retire from singing, and then she became the general manager of the New York Opera, the New York City Opera, her what she thought was hers to do was to help mentor younger singers coming along, was to expand the role of opera, to put the beauty of this music out there into the world. What was hers to do had changed. And she wore a necklace that had the letters IADT on it. She wore that on her neck. Because inevitably, someone would come up and say, "Don't you miss singing? You're just an incredible singer. Why don't you sing anymore?" And she would point to the necklace, IADT, and she would say, "I already did that. I already did that." And it didn't matter if people got it or not. She had already performed and grown to a place where it was time to move on. It was time to take on another mission, another chance for her to do something more that was calling her. So what's mine to do can change, it can grow, it can evolve. Let me tell you about this gentleman. His name is Trey Ganem. You've probably seen him in the news recently. He's the owner of Soulshine Productions. Now, Ganem used to customize and build cars. That was what was his to do. He was really good at it. He would customize these cars, and people would come from miles around for him to work on their cars. But something happened when he attended a funeral of his friend. And as he was attending the funeral, he saw the casket, and the thought that he had was, that's just a plain, boring casket. I wish it reflected more of who my friend was. And from that came what was his to do. He decided that he was going to be someone who created custom caskets for people. He said, that when he was interviewed by USA Today, he said, it's the most important time of a family's life, the most tragic, and we try, meaning his company, we try to make it as perfect and personal as we can. Is that a fabulous mission? He really took this to heart. So he started Soulshine Productions, and that's what he does. People come from all over the place to have a personal casket done for their family member. So when the Texas Funeral Directors Association contacted him a few weeks ago after the Uvalde shooting and said, can you help us with these families who are grieving? He said, I'm in. And he talked with the families of each victim. He found out what their likes, their personalities were all about. And then in 3.5 days, he and his staff put together caskets for each of those children. And he did 19 caskets in all, and the 2 adults. And so you can see this one, he had Woody and Toy Story, and then this child was a Superman fan. And then this one was a Disney princess, I believe. And you can see this one loved TikTok. And so you can see the love that went into each of these caskets. And he has decided this is this is his to do. This is his to do. And so one of the most important questions I think we can ask ourselves is, what is mine to do? What am I here? And that's the most frequent question I get when I'm working with people. I coach those who want either on encouragement or a little hitch in their get-along to find that which is theirs to do. And I had a woman come to me years ago, and she started our session by telling me how she hated her job. She just hated it. She said, it's a backstabbing, money-grabbing culture. It's like every man for himself. She said, I can't stand it. And I'm just getting beat down day after day. I don't know how much longer I can be in this environment. And as she's going on and on about this, I just listened. And at the end of her story, I said to her, what if you are there to be the light? What if you are the light that this company desperately needs? What if Spirit has placed you there to make a huge difference in the lives of these people who are simply unskilled and unaware of their spiritual divinity? And she went, oh, I get it. She went back and reported back to me later that the workplace was changing. What a shocker. That simply by her shifting to, I'm here to be the light, now was her thing to do, was her cause. And all of a sudden, people around her started reacting in nicer and kinder ways. And I love that there are no accidents. This isn't a random universe, my friends. We are placed in the perfect exact spot that we need to be for our growth and for the good of the planet. I love this quote by Panache Desai. He says, our job is the excuse through which we get to love people. Isn't that great? And he goes on to say, we are put in exactly the place that we need to be to love the people we are around. And I have to tell you, that includes our family of origin. That includes those of us who were born into difficult families. And we were the light. We are the light. We are constantly being given opportunities to show up and to be on purpose with being our loving selves. This is difficult, I know, for many of us, because I know when I'm around family of origin, sometimes it yanks me back. Do you know what I mean? It yanks me back to a different mindset. But that's the work, isn't it? That's where we get to do our spiritual practice, to keep knowing the truth of who we are as well as those around us. So how can I serve? How can I serve? That's the ultimate question that we get to ask ourselves. Not just what's in it for me or what's my mission, but how can I serve is an even deeper question. Because we know that this world is in desperate need of the light that we share. I'm going to close with a story about a gentleman who really got a good idea of what he was here and how he was here to serve. His name is Al Andrews, and he asked himself that question. You see, he was is a therapist in the Nashville, Tennessee area. He had a small practice in Franklin, Tennessee, which is a suburb there of Nashville. And he was doing okay, but what he found was that many of the people coming through his counseling practice were in the music industry, not surprisingly. And he realized that many of them were the ones that had their faces on the album covers. And as he discovered this, he realized that those people, some of them were well known, but many of them were struggling. They were on their path to trying to become more visible in the music world. And he said what he realized was that because of touring schedules, it was really hard for people to have regular attendance with him for counseling, and many of them struggled to even come up with the money to afford that. So he's pondering this in addition to how can I serve? And a friend of his suggested, why don't you talk with Peter York? He's one of the record labels, the head of the record label, and just talk to him about that. So he went and talked to him. Little did he know that Peter York was already asking himself the question, how can I serve? Because he knew that there were issues, and they were trying to shepherd all these musicians through their system. So when Al Andrews came and sat with Peter, they hatched a plan. And this plan was to try a pilot program. And for a month, they were going to, once a week, Al was going to offer free counseling to any musician. And Peter York, the head of the label, was going to pay for that. The only stipulation Peter had was, it's not just musicians from my label, but any musician can come and take advantage of your services. So he did that for a month, and then it went on 2 months, 3 months. They then evaluated, after that 1 day a week, it was very successful. The word was getting out. And they realized that this was a bigger mission than what they had originally envisioned. Al took his practice and he changed it into a nonprofit, a 501(c)(3). And he completely redid how he was doing things. And the label head, Peter York, said, I'm going to help you. I'm going to go out and I'm going to start doing fundraising. And we're going to support this 501(c)(3) because we're great at putting our musicians out there. We get them photographed well, we clothe them, we find the right music for them, we put them on the stages, but we're not taking care of their souls. And because of that, there's addiction and marriages are failing because people are on the road, and there's all kinds of issues that these musicians are facing. we have got to find a place and create this place. They call it Porter's Call. And the reason why they chose that name was in olden times, God, I sound old when I say that. In olden times, the Benedictine monasteries, when a traveler would come up weary and tired and knock on the door of the monastery, it was the porter. That was the job of the porter, to open the door, welcome that traveler in, give him food if he needed it, or a bed to sleep in if he needed it, or just an ear to listen if that's what the traveler needed. The porter was there to help guide and to support that person. So they call it Porter's Call. It's now been going several years, and musicians in Nashville know that this is a place that they can go. There are all kinds of wonderful accolades that are coming out of now. You can go onto their website and actually be a supporter of them. I went onto it this week and was looking at it. You can be a regular donor, and they've got many corporate sponsors. But this is what Thomas Rhett, who is a very popular singer today, had to say about this. He said, "Porter's Call has taught me to stay true to myself and how to use fame as a platform to do good in this world, rather than a place to boost my ego, lose sense of who I am, or to wreck my marriage. Being on the road can be challenging, especially for a married artist, but my wife and I have been truly encouraged by Porter's Call. They do not sugarcoat the truth, which in turn leaves us feeling confident, knowing the truth about the challenges we have faced and soon will face, and how to successfully manage these situations." Isn't that beautiful? That what started as, I see a lot of musicians coming in my door, has turned into a thriving nonprofit that is impacting those who are out there gifting the world with their music. It's an amazing way if we just tune in. How can I serve? If you ask that question, I promise you that it will be answered by Spirit. And it will be answered in a wonderful way that you may have never imagined in your life. So, being a transformative force for good, I'm going to challenge you like I challenged that inmate. Are you willing to be a transformative force for good in this world? Are you willing to open up to your divine assignment, to know that consciousness goes forward and always paves the way for you? And if you've been given something in your mind that you've conceived an idea, you automatically have been given the way for it to come true. This is the work that we are here to do. There's a higher calling for each one of us. I invite you this week, ask yourself, can I be a transformative force in this world? And what is mine to do, and how can I serve? There is no higher calling. Namaste.